Welcome everybody to the Light on Wisdom Gita study for the year 2006. We're thrilled to have you all here. And I'll just chant some mantras and then we'll start. Chant along if you wish to. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, wonderful to have you all here. I'll share a few things before we get started, just simple things I usually like to share. One is that I love to make friends this way. And so we're going to be spending some time together, about 10 classes, I think. But I hope that our connection goes on long after this and that we stay connected and that you please see me as your servant. And feel free to reach out to me and connect with me on social media or those kind of things. But I've made lifelong friendships this way, so I hope it can be like that with all of you as well. Please come in. Paul, please come in. Jessica, please come in. Find wherever you can find yourself. Maybe that's a good spot for you? Yeah. Okay, we got a good-sized crowd here. Wonderful. I want to share the idea that I don't feel like I'm here to convince you of anything or preach to you. I feel like what my responsibility here is to present the Bhagavad-gita in an authentic way. And then you can do with that as you like. But I may speak like a representative of the tradition. And I may, for instance, I may speak of reincarnation as if it's a fact. I may speak of Krishna as being the supreme being as a fact because I'm trying to present the Gita as it is. But if I am speaking like that, I'm not meaning to impose anything on you, but just try to represent. Is that understood? Clear? Makes sense? Okay. I also like to keep things, generally I like to keep them relatively informal in the sense that we have some time together and we can ask questions whenever we need. I'm a little concerned to stick with my agenda because we want to cover a lot in the Gita. We want to try to cover it all. I don't know if we're going to read every verse together, but it would be wonderful if we could work our way through all the chapters. So that will require some discipline, and I'm prone to go off on tangents, and if people ask me questions that take me that way, some classes facilitate that. This one may be a little less than normal, but please don't hesitate to ask any question. And if I choose not to take it right now, we can discuss it outside the class. But I really encourage questions. And I want you to feel like, I don't want you to feel like, oh no, I don't understand what's going on. Everybody else probably does, and I don't. if you're not catching on to something, it's likely other people aren't catching on, and then it's a good idea that you raise your hand and we clarify things. So please don't hesitate to do that, or ask other types of questions that you're curious about or wondering about. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay. And beyond that, I just want to share that this Bhagavad Gita is not just an ancient relic that we're looking at. This is a text that is alive. This is a text that continues to change lives like crazy all around the world. And if you take this Bhagavad Gita as something that, as like a lifeline, or as like a living, really like a living manifestation of Krishna's message, it, I promise it will change your life. You know, it just does that. If you say, you know what, I'm going to do with my life. I know people who have done this. I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita every day. Right? You just decide that's what I'm going to do. For the rest of my life, I'm going to read from. It will change your life in a powerful way. It's really dynamic. So I'm hoping that that will really come out and that we approach it that way. Of course, everyone's welcome to approach it however they feel, but I'm encouraging people to try to open it up to it that way. Try to see it as as something that's very relevant, rather than just something to know about, something to be transformed by, because that's what it was intended to do. It was intended to transform Arjuna's life right on the battlefield in his most desperate time. And uh, there's a beautiful verse in Srimad Bhagavatam that it describes a time in Arjuna's life when Krishna leaves this world, and his brother Yudhishthira, who's the king, is seeing all kind of inauspicious omens. And when Arjuna comes back from Dwarka, where he was with Krishna, but now Krishna has left, and he sees Arjuna's face, he understands something is very wrong. Welcome, Ginger. That name is easy to remember. and and he sees Arjuna's face and he knows there's something wrong. And he says to Arjuna, Arjuna, I can see something's very wrong just by looking in your face. Could it be this? Could it be that? He's naming all these things that he might have done something wrong or irresponsible, or this may have happened or that may, but he knows, he kind of knows what's happening. He waits, and the last thing he says, or could it be that our dear friend Krishna has left this world? And then Arjuna says, that's what it was. And he describes what happened, and it's real heartbreaking, and I won't go into all the details, but then he says, but there's one thing that continues to give me life, that continues to give me hope, and that is those words that he spoke to me on the battlefield, the Bhagavad Gita. That this is a book, this is a message that will inform us at all points in our life, give us a better life, a higher quality life, a happier life, and save us in those most desperate moments in our lives. Bhagavad Gita. All right? At least that's how I feel about it. And we'll see how you feel about it. How many of you Bhagavad Gita is new to, haven't really read it before? We got one, we got two. Okay, only two. Three. Tarun, you're familiar with it though. But you never read the whole way through. Have you? Not yet. Okay. Tarun, maybe it's time to do that. You and Maya working on that together. Okay. All right. We're going to study together for about 2 hours every day, 10 to 12. I think one nice thing is we kind of have the freedom to go a little overtime if we need to, because that happens a lot in classes, and there's nothing too pressing in the schedule. So please be prepared. We may go 5, 10, 15 minutes overtime sometimes if we feel the need. Otherwise, we won't. I wanted an hour at least or so to be left in your schedule for your own reading. I'm going to not exactly assign reading, but it's not that you have to do it, but I encourage you to do it. Read what we'll be discussing in the next day. So right now I'll say, we're not going to start the Gita today. We're going to look at verses from the Gita, but tomorrow we'll read chapters 1. And I would recommend for you today to read chapters 1 and 2. You can read just the verses. It doesn't take very long. And we'll discuss those. If you have questions, please write them down. We can take those questions in class. So if you can fit that in, I think it would be helpful for you. And that's about it for now. Any questions before we get started? Jivaji? Hold it for questions. We have microphones for questions.
Oh, why don't we get a microphone for that? What's the stick for, Kaustubha?
That's a pointer.
I'm scared. Okay.
This is old school here. But just if need be, yeah, especially you.
Just in case.
Jiva and I go back a very long time.
Yes, we do.
And I know her nature. She tends to step out of line every now and then. Okay. I have this first slide up here. 3 lenses through which we'll examine the verses of the Bhagavad Gita. I have a certain model that I want to use. Or it's kind of several models. We're not going to probably have time to read every verse together, but we'll read sections of verses and we'll talk about whole chapters and what the message is. But really, even the last time I read the Bhagavad Gita the whole way through was this past September. Some of you, raise your hand if you took that course online. Okay, so more than half of you. When I read the Bhagavad Gita, I've been studying the Bhagavad Gita since 1986. But when I read it that time, I started understanding things that I didn't understand before. So it really will always be opening up in new ways, but a lot of it has to do with context. I had studied other things, and then when I came back to the Bhagavad Gita, it was speaking to me in the context of what I had studied. And so what I want to do is provide 3 models. I'm going to use some language. It may sound technical, but everything that I want to present to you, I want it to be simple and clear. And so I want to take the time today to go through these models and see how they work. I'm calling them like models of evolution, different stages of progress that a person may go through in their understanding or their own transformation. And when we look at a verse in Bhagavad Gita, which level is this speaking to? Does that make sense so far? I'm going to clarify that hopefully. But we're going to look at 3 models. 2 of them have 3 levels. One of them has 5 levels. So already that's 11 different platforms that a particular verse may speak on. And then at the end, if we have time, I'm going to throw in 2 other ways that we might look at, 2 other types of verses that we could look for in the Gita. So my idea is that as you're reading the Gita, you can ask yourself, oh, I see this one's speaking on this level. Now I understand why he's saying this, right? And or the other 2 verses, the other 2 types of it. One is called Krishna factor verses. There's certain verses in the Bhagavad Gita that show that despite all that's discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, all the different types of yoga, all the different stages of realization, all the different Vedic practices, all of this, excuse me, all of this outlined Vedic practices and culture and philosophy, despite all of it, you can set it all aside, because if you just surrender your life to Krishna, if you just connect to Krishna, if you just remember Krishna, you get all that and more. You get his special grace. There's many verses in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna speaks like this. So I call those Krishna factor verses. And then there's another type of verse that has to do with like Vedic revelation, that there's a lot spoken about in the Vedas and the Upanishads about the absolute truth, about God. But they're not always clear to define exactly who God is or what God is. But in certain verses in the Bhagavad Gita, thank you, Krishna says, that's me. That's me. He uses the same language as the Vedic texts use. And he says, it's almost like saying, remember when you read about this in the Upanishads, but it didn't clarify that this was a person, or it didn't clarify what person this was referring to? That's me. It's a really important revelation, and we'll get to all of that. But I just wanted to share with you, that's how I plan on approaching this class, that we're going to have these lenses that we can look at any particular verse and understand its context better by having these different models that we're looking through. Any questions about that? Does it make sense? Is anybody saying, like, I don't know what this guy's talking about? A little bit? Okay, well, even if you are feeling a little bit like that, when I show them next, we're going to go through them now. And we can ask all the questions you need to ask. So let's get this foundation set nice and clear so that we can understand better as we go forward. Yeah, next slide. So these are 3 models of evolution. And I'm saying each one is a model of evolution. Each one is stages of progress. And we'll just look at them one at a time. The first one is called evolution in motive. And what that means is, if you look at all of the ancient Vedic literatures, how many of you, if I said to you, how many of you know who the sage Vyasadeva is? How many of you are very comfortable knowing that? Raise your hand if you are. Raise your hand if you're not, or if you're in between. Okay, so we need to get this really clear. There was a sage named Vyasadeva. At the end of the Kali Yuga, at the beginning of the Kali Yuga, the age that we live in now. Well, let me put it this way. Before the Kali Yuga, before this age, which means going back over 5,000 years, it's said that people lived longer lives. It's said that people had better memories. It's said that people had more peaceful minds. It's said that the Vedic wisdom, this world is not just a random explosion of gases in space, but it's a mechanism. This world is an apparatus. It's a big universal machine. It's designed by a designer with a purpose. And just like any other type of apparatus or machine or appliance, it always comes with, I would say, a manual. Yeah, a manual, right? How do you use this machine? What is it for? How do you use it right? And so it's said that this world, this universe that we're in, has its manual, and that manual is a vast body of knowledge. Called the Veda, right? And what does Veda mean? Anyone know? Knowledge, right? So it's pretty simple, pretty generic when you think of it that way. The knowledge. And that knowledge is something that exists. Like it always exists, it always has existed. It's not man-made. There's a Sanskrit word, apurusheya. Apurusheya. It means it's not man-made. There's no person that created it. It's always existed. It's not a creation of this world. And the followers of the Vedas say, therefore, it's dependable. It provides truth. It doesn't have the faults that man-made creations have. This becomes very important in Vedanta, in the study of the Vedas, that there's this source of knowledge that provides truth, that we can measure truth against, whether something is true. And that Veda was something that floats through the atmosphere. It's in the ether. It's everywhere. And people that had the right yogic capacity or ability could tap into that knowledge and download it, right? And, this is something that may sound very mythological. Why would someone believe that floating in the air, there's knowledge? And if we said that 100 years ago, I would accept that as a reasonable objection. But nowadays, if you think about it, inside the 4 walls that we are surrounded by right now, within this space, even a tighter space, I could even say like that much space, everything, every what do they call it, megabyte of information that's on YouTube is existing right in this space. Is it not true? Right? It's just floating through the air, right? How much gigabytes, terabytes, I don't even know, how much information is on YouTube? It's like a colossal amount of information. And where is it? It's floating through the atmosphere. And you just need the right technology and you can tap into it and download it. And so the yogis are saying that's how this Veda works. And you might say, okay, but we have technology in order to do it. But they would say, well, you know what? The human brain, the human mind, these are far more subtle, well-developed instruments than your computer, right? And they have the capacity to download information. So that Veda is there. But there would be certain sages that could download it and then share it. They would share it orally. There was no need to write it down in past ages because people could memorize it. And to this day, just recently in the news, I saw this, maybe some of you saw it. There was a young man in South India, like a young Brahmana, young priest, and he received some special award because he practically had memorized like all the Vedas, right? At some extreme amount of knowledge, he had memorized it all. And that's, they have techniques in ways to do it, how they chant it together, as they chant, the different intonations, the different bodily movements that they make when they chant. There's all these mnemonic devices that they use to help memorize it. And so that's the way this Vedic knowledge was handed down in the past. But as the yuga was beginning to change to the Kali Yuga, this age that we're in now, 5,000 years ago, and they knew that people were going to have short lives, be unlucky, misguided, weak memories, and above all, anyone know what it is? It's a famous verse in Bhagavad-gita, Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagyu Padruta. Above all, their minds are always disturbed. That's us. They're talking about us. And they're saying for these people, it'll be very difficult to memorize so much. It needs to be written down. So Vyasadeva was entrusted, one sage, was entrusted to download this knowledge. And not just download it, but edit it, kind of categorize it, because it's a vast body of knowledge. He didn't necessarily take the whole thing down, but he took enough down, right? And he edited it and categorized it and then had it written down. And that's the Vedic knowledge that we have today. That's what we're drawing from. Does that make sense? So this one sage, his name was? Vyasadeva. Sometimes he's called Vyasa. Sometimes he's called Veda Vyasa. Vyasa really is more of a title than a name. His real name was Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Vyasa means the editor. He took all the knowledge and he edited it, categorized it, presented it. And his life's work, you could say, we can call it the Vedic literature, right? It's coming from the Veda. And it rolls out in a progression. Are you ready to hear that progression? Yeah. This is going to become, you can't fully understand what you're reading in the Bhagavad-gita unless you get this background. That's why I want to give this background. It starts with a set of books called the Vedas, or we can call them the four Vedas. Now, these books are called the Karma Kanda. The word Kanda means like division or section. So you could call this the karma section of his works. That is followed by a set of books called the Upanishads. It's called the Jnana Kanda. Jnana means? Knowledge. Karma means? Action. This is the action section. This is the knowledge section. Another book comes along, because the Upanishads are like 108 books. they're fascinating books, but if you look at them all together, they seem a bit disorganized. Like there's not a clear progression. There's not they're not laid out like so systematically. You might look at them and say they seem to be all over the place, full of wisdom, but kind of like all over the place. So then he wrote a text called the Vedanta Sutra. Which was about 600 verses, 600 sutras, 600 terse, dense aphorisms that summarize the teachings of the Upanishads and lay them out in a systematic thesis, you could say. Lay them out in a systematic presentation. Does those two things, Vedanta Sutra. How many of you have heard of Vedanta Sutra? Something that's called the Brahma Sutra. How many of you heard of the Yoga Sutras? Right? So it's like that, these little statements. They're very cryptic. The Upanishads in general are quite cryptic. They're not simple to understand. They're very deep and philosophical. The four Vedas, they're also not easy to understand. But these are books that when it says that they're the karma kanda, it means that karma means action, and karma also implies reaction. Right? That for every action you do, there's a reaction. So it's saying that's how the universe works, right? We're saying that this is a manual for the universe. The universe works in such a way that for every action you do, there's a reaction that comes back your way. So if you want to live in this world happily, if you want to prosper in this world, what to speak of if in your next birth you really want to take it to the next level, then learn to act in this world so that your actions bring positive reactions, right? And so that's called the karma kanda. Learn how to enjoy this world. If when you look at this world you think it's here for me to enjoy, that's what life is about, then that's not the most enlightened state. But if that's the way you want to do it in a more enlightened way. And that involves learning how to act within this world. It involves recognizing that everything that you get in life is given to you. The sun, right? Where would we be without the sun? Right? We wouldn't have anything. There's a person behind the sun. The heat and light department of this universe, it doesn't just run automatically. There's a person behind it. You need to show your gratitude to that person, right? The water department, right? The rain that comes down, there's a person behind that too. Who's behind the sun?
Surya.
They call him Surya. Who's behind the rain? They call him Indra, right? The river, if you live on the bank of the river, it's not just happening on its own. There's a goddess behind that, right? Maybe Ganga, maybe Yamuna, like that. The wind, very important in our lives, right? Vayu is behind that. In so many ways, these Vedas are going to tell us about the different gods and goddesses that are behind everything that we receive in this world. If you receive these things and don't say thank you, it's very impolite. It's very, let's say, unevolved, right? Devolved, unevolved, unenlightened, right? You're not a very evolved person if you receive great gifts and don't even thank someone for them. You're not growing, right? Learn to grow. Learn to show respect and gratitude, and also learn to respect everybody else in the world that you're living with. If you're kind to those people, if you're generous, then kindness and generosity will come back to you. If you're cruel to others, if you're miserly, well, then cruelty will come your way. When you need something, someone won't be there to help you. So learn to follow the four Vedas, all the different rituals that they teach to show gratitude, to cultivate a feeling of gratitude. In this way, even though you're a materialist, you're evolving, right? You're treating people better. You're recognizing the higher powers that are behind the world that we live in, something that people should know. This is what the Vedas are teaching.
What does kanda mean?
Kanda means section or division. So karma kanda means the karma books, the karma division, the karma section of what? Huh? Of what? So many people spoke at once. of the broader Vedic literature. Right? This is the karma section. Question about that? We'll talk more about it, but we can leave it there for now if there's no more questions. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything all right? Okay. You need a seat? There you go. Then, yes, Hans.
Maybe just one part. So you had the Atur. Oh,
Wait 1 sec.
We're going to move the camera too. There we go.
what about the other division of like the Rig Veda and the Atharva Veda?
Those are divisions within the Karma Kanda.
Within the Karma Kanda.
Yeah, so that's the 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Atharva,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it's slipping my mind right now. Yajur Vedas. So there's 4 Vedas.
Okay.
Now there's one, since you brought that up, there's one technicality here that can be a little confusing. Let's clear it up right now. Everybody okay?
Yeah, we're just trying to get some cushions for these guys. Mike is looking for some.
Okay.
She's cold.
Okay. You can come sit here if you like, or anywhere you need.
Share this.
Let's just settle it quick and we'll move on.
Oh, there's 2 cushions there. They're sitting
Oh.
I offered one.
Oh, okay. Okay, we got a cushion. That's all right. All right, there's one technicality here. There's probably going to be many technicalities, but this one is fundamental and we should understand it. And when we walk out of here, it would be wonderful if you all understood these different khandas, these different divisions of Vyasadev's work, and had a. Maybe you could pull up a picture of Vyasadeva, Google a picture of Vyasadeva. And but while she's doing that, if everyone didn't get lost looking at the screen, I can keep you here. The 4 Vedas, they're divided into 4 sections, four different Vedas, and each Veda has 4 divisions as well. I'm not going to get into all of that right now. But the last division of each one of those is called Upanishads. So in other words, the Upanishads are part of the 4 Vedas, but they're the last part of each of the 4 Vedas. Each Veda, each of the 4 Vedas has Upanishads that come, a collection of Upanishads that are part of it that come at the end. But because their message is so different than the rest of the Vedas, when we say the 4 Vedas and the Upanishads, often they're being spoken about in contrast to each other. Does that make sense? Should I say it again?
Yes.
Okay, do we have Vyasadeva up there? There's our beautiful Vyasadeva. Look, he's got all his books right there.
Leaning on them.
He's done so much seva. If you have 4 Vedas, I know it looks a little like the black flag logo. Didn't do that intentionally. So each one of these 4 Vedas has 4 divisions. Okay? And they're all like this. And it's called the Brahmanas, the this, the that. And the last one is going to be the Upanishads. Each one has Upanishads within it. Okay?
What does Upanishad mean?
Upanishad literally means to sit near. And it's the idea is that it's conversations that are going on between gurus and disciples, sages and their followers especially, sharing their wisdom. So you sit near, you sit close. But the idea is that if you look at any of these, the first 3 sections of each of these Vedas are karma kanda. They deal with how to enjoy this world in a pious way, how to do good actions in this work for the motive. And that's why we're calling, if we can go back to that other slide, that's why we're calling this an evolution of motive. From karma to jnana to bhakti. These are the 3 khandas, the 3 divisions of Vyasadev's work. Because the motive here in the karma khanda is to enjoy this world. I want to enjoy this world in the best possible way. And the Vedic teachings show me how to do that. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's a materialist still, not a yogi really. But someone that's following the Vedic teachings and evolving, taking a step forward in evolution. Then So the Upanishads, again, just to make this clear, they're part of the four Vedas, but because they teach a very different thing, the Upanishads are going to come and say, why are you trying to enjoy this world? Don't you see that you have a much higher potential? Don't you see that the things of this world, whatever enjoyment you get from them, you lose? And when you lose it, you feel pain? Right? Haven't you had enough of living life after life feeling enjoyment and pain, enjoyment and pain, enjoyment and pain, right? Wouldn't you like to transcend that? If you would stop reaching to the outside things in the world, even doing it in your pious way, doing nice rituals and so on, so that you get the things of this world, if you were to leave that behind, renounce all that, and turn within, go to a quiet place, go up to a mountain somewhere, stay up there, leave the world behind, go deep within yourself, contemplate your own true nature, that you are eternal, right? That by nature you're blissful. Find that within yourself by leaving the rest of the world behind. This is the message of the Upanishads. Very different message, you understand? Everybody with me? Very different idea? That's why even though the Upanishads are part of the four Vedas, they're spoken of as if they're separate from them. Okay? In contrast to them. So if someone says the Vedas, you'll be able to tell by how they're speaking whether they mean all of this or just this. If
Repeat that. I didn't.
it's have to be repeated one more time.
Just to repeat the separate part where you said those are separate from the.
What I'm saying, and it's not that complicated,
Yeah.
that the Vedas are divided into four sections, and each of those four sections are divided into four sections. But the last section of each of the Vedas is called Upanishads. So therefore, the Upanishads are part of the four Vedas, right? But because their message is so different from the rest of it, that even though they're part of the four Vedas, they're often spoken of in contrast to the four Vedas. So you have the Vedas and then you have the Upanishads. You see, they'll say like that, well, there's the Vedas and there's Upanishads. But once you say Vedas, you've already said Upanishads. But they'll say there's the Vedas and there's Upanishads because the Upanishads are so different, because they have such a different message. Rather than saying enjoy the world, they're saying renounce the world. Rather than saying the world is a playground, they're saying the world is a prison. It's a very different message. So now this becomes the Jnana Kanda, the Gyan knowledge now, right? This person's knowledge is not so well developed. Their knowledge of the self. Who am I? They think they're their body. They think they're their mind. But over here, they're saying, no, you're the spirit. You're the Atma. Atma Jnana, knowledge of the self. That's going to set you free. Understand? Very different message, Jnana Kanda.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, what's the point of the Vedas? Because it sounds to me like the Karma Kandara is pointing you into the wrong place.
Oh, very good question. Very good question. It's not the wrong place if you are lower on the level of evolution. In other words, there's karma, but there's a platform called vikarma. Vikarma means I see the world as meant for my enjoyment, but I do it recklessly. I don't see or recognize any higher power. I don't feel gratitude for the sun and the rain and all of that. I don't recognize any of that. I just exploit its resources. If I harm another person, I don't worry that that's going to come back to me. I don't worry about it at all, right? I just get what I can get. That's called vikarma, right? It's a more reckless way of going through. So if you're there and someone comes along and says, you know what? I see you want to enjoy the world, that's okay, but there's a better way to go about it. And they start to explain to you, think about these things, think about the sun, think about the moon, and think about this, that everything you do comes back at you. If you would start to put out good energy, then more good energy is going to come to you. Especially you might hear that message if you were suffering at the time. There's a reason that you're suffering. It's because of the way that you're acting. Karma. But if you learn to act on a higher level, well, then you'll receive better things in life. So it's a step up. It's a step up the ladder in evolution. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So one of the challenging things about the vast Vedic literature is that because Vyasadeva is speaking on different levels, people become confused about what his message is. Right? He's speaking to people on all different levels. It's not like so much like the Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic kind of text where it's kind of like saying, here's the line. Either you accept God or you don't. You accept God and you go to heaven. You don't, you go to hell. Now get on the right side of the line. Rather, it says, I'm going to meet you where you're at. I'm going to encourage you where you're at. If you're on the level of V-karma, I'm going to speak and talk about karma as if it's such a great thing that you're going to want to do it. It's going to instill faith in you that that's the best way to live. But once you're there, I'm going to have Upanishads to say, why are you there? You should come up here, right? And then when you're on the level of Upanishads, there's one more step. I'm going to say, why? Now you've realized the self, and through that you've got a much more peaceful mind, but still there's an emptiness there. Still there's an emptiness there. Still you have much more potential. You're just kind of at a neutral stage of peace right now, but there's still more, and that becomes... Bhakti Kanda. That becomes the Bhakti Kanda, the third section, the section on devotion, or the section on love. You could say it's action, knowledge, love. This is the evolution. Okay, and we have it there as well. So the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra, the Jnana Kanda, these are texts that are meant to help you think about the nature of yourself. These are texts that are kind of swinging to the other side. The Vedas are saying, enjoy the world, but do it right. And the Upanishads are swinging over here, and they're saying, everything in this world is an illusion. This is what the Upanishads get into. It's philosophical stuff. It's like all form is illusion. Individuality, that I am me and you are you, is illusion, right? At least that's the way it's commonly interpreted, because it's very cryptic. It's not easy to understand. These texts. I'll give you an example of a famous verse from the Upanishads. You ready? It says, Om Purnam Adaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. This word Purna is repeated here a lot, right? Does anyone know what Purna means? Complete, right? Full or complete. This is full, that is full. When you take away the full from the full, fullness remains. Now, there's a very good explanation for that, but you need an explanation for it. You understand? You need a commentary on that. You need a great yogi to say, let me explain to you what this means. And that's called the tradition of Vedanta, right? And I'm going to explain a bit more about that. But so you've swung from enjoy the forms of this world to the forms of this world are illusion. You swung from enjoy your individuality and relationships with other individuals, your family. Vedas are talking about how to have, healthy children and enjoy, a parenthood and how to provide for them and all that. So that this is seen as like how you enjoy the material world through loved ones and so on. Upanishads are going to come along and say, that's not your family, right? That's just, for a momentary, two atmas have crossed paths and they identify with one another, and then they separate forever, and you never come together again, and you suffer. That's your idea of enjoyment is, if you look at it clearly, it's suffering, right? Have any of you suffered in family relationships before? I mean, whether you're bothering each other or whether you're losing each other, it's suffering. So the Upanishads are saying you can transcend that. The Vedas are saying enjoy that. And the Upanishads, they can be read in such a way where when you read them, it appears that what they're saying is that all form is illusion, all individuality is. There's a school of Vedanta that interprets it that way, but there's another school that interprets it from a different position, from the Bhakti position. And that's where the next Bhakti Kanda becomes really important. And here you have a collection of books. the Mahabharata. Vyasadeva now writes the next text, or he downloads, we could say, and edits the next text. The Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is an epic. The Mahabharata is 10 times longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey put together. It's a huge work. These books are technical, a lot of ritual, and they're meant for priests. Only the priests read them. Nobody else is very interested in reading them. You learn all your rituals here. These books are for the renunciates, for the sannyasis, for the people that are walking away from the world. Other than that, it's not so relevant to you because that's what they're telling you to do. But are you ready to leave your family? Are you ready to leave your job? Are you ready to just walk off into the forest? Not too many people. So that's who these are really relevant for. Mahabharata is a book where Vyasadeva says, I want the whole world to be able to appreciate this wisdom and apply it in their life. So he writes this massive story, right? Massive epic, absolutely fascinating, captivating. Everybody loves it, right? Tarun, he's been reading Mahabharata and knows all the stories and knows he can tell you you ask him a question about it, he can answer it. It's from childhood, it's fascinating, and you're still reading these texts, on your deathbed and learning from them. And within that massive work is the Bhagavad-gita, right? At its most crucial point, right as it's building up to the point that everybody's waiting for, the big fight, just as it starts, Arjuna falls apart, the hero of the Mahabharata, and the Bhagavad-gita is spoken to him to help him in his time of need, right? So within this text, you get Bhagavad-gita. And then there's another large collection of books called the Puranas, 18 Puranas, full of stories. Some of the Puranas have like 80,000 verses in them. Others are not as long. But these are tons. This is where you hear about the gods and the goddesses and the sages and the kings and all these stories. Practically so much of what we see in Indian culture is stemming from the Puranas. From especially the Mahabharata, another text called the Ramayana, very important text that wasn't written by Vyas, and from the Puranas, and amongst the Puranas, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. But especially the Bhagavad-gita and the Srimad, which is part of Mahabharata. Actually, could you pull up this other slide? It's in that other slideshow. Yeah, to the right. There you go. And hit play. So here's everything I've been discussing, right? You have the Vedas and you have the Upanishads. The Upanishads are part of the Vedas, but their message is so distinct that they're in their own category, right? And they become part of the Jnana Kanda, whereas the Vedas are the Karma Kanda. And then you have the Mahabharata and the Puranas. And the Mahabharata includes the Bhagavad-gita, and the Puranas include, especially important, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, question, Verity.
Is the Ramayana a Purusha?
It's seen that way, yes. It's seen. I mean, there's always different lineages and so on, but as far as I know, it's very much accepted that way. Certainly in the Bhakti lineages. Yeah. The question was, is the Ramayana, the story of Lord Ram, which is also a huge epic, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata together are a category of text called itihasa. Itihasa. And so this Ramayana was written by another sage, not by Vyasadeva, but she was asking, is it also seen as apaurushaya, as flawless, eternal knowledge? Like that. But it's said, and this is a really important idea, it's written in Mahabharata, and there are other important places that speak of it like this. One, there's a text within the Upanishads that say that the Puranas are the fifth, that the Mahabharata, the Itihasas and Puranas are the fifth Veda. They're the fifth Veda. By saying that, what is it doing? Can anyone guess? If we say that these books are the fifth Veda, what's special about the Vedas? They're eternal and they're truth. They're flawless truth. They're the breathing of God. This eternal truth. It's apaurushaya, not man-made. So it's saying that, okay, the Puranas and Mahabharata are like that. That's a very significant point. There's also references that state that these books The Itihasa, including Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, and Puranas are there to clarify the teachings of the Vedas and Upanishads. Right? And they'll even say you cannot understand these books without reading these books. They won't make sense to you. And it's true. And it's really true. So that's important when we look at the Bhagavad Gita, because the relevance of many of the verses that we read in the Bhagavad Gita are that they're going to clarify what's not quite clear here yet. Okay? There's a lot of that going on in the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm about to get to a particular tension between the Vedas and the Upanishads that the Bhagavad Gita speaks to in a powerful way. But any questions before I move on? Jivaji.
So,
1 second.
all of the, oh, yeah, sorry. So, everything that's written, was this calculated as a succession
Yes, it's
timeline? So it's really very,
linear.
thank you, yes.
Within the tradition, it's seen as rolling out in exactly the way that I'm saying.
Okay, so,
Outside the tradition, scholars always try to date things in different ways. So they'll have, I don't know how much they accept this. They would give it different dates, but they would probably also accept that it's rolling out in that kind of progression.
so it's also not only in that succession, in linear, it's also an evolving sort of.
The message is evolving.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I want everyone to walk away
Yes.
with. Understand that. In other words, if you looked at Vyasa like an author, his message is evolving from karma, well, if we go back to the other one, from karma to jnana to bhakti. And if we look at any verse within the Bhagavad Gita, we could say, is this one speaking on the level of jnana? Is it speaking on the level of karma? Is it speaking on the level of bhakti? And that's what I want you to be able to look at and determine. And we'll do a lot of that as we go through the Gita. Yes, Kat. Yes.
Pass this down, please. Sorry if you explained this already, but so the Vedas are related to karma, or sorry,
Karma
yeah.
kanda,
And the Upanishads are related to jnana,
jnana.
and basically, the first is how to enjoy life with karma, good
Yes.
karma, and the second is how to renounce the world, which is an illusion.
And enjoy the inner happiness that is your nature.
Yes. What is the third?
That's the bhakti kanda,
But
and that's
what-
devotion.
Devotion.
That's saying that beyond considerations of, you could say that this means how to enjoy this world. And this is how to find release from the sufferings of this world, right? Bhakti says, I don't look at this world as a place of enjoyment. I don't look at this world as a place of suffering. I'm not trying to enjoy resources that aren't mine. I'm also not trying to escape pain within that realm. Those are two polar opposites, kind of. There's kind of a thesis. You've heard of, what do they call it? The thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, right? So the thesis of the Vedas would be, you can enjoy this world if you do it in the right way. Be dutiful, be good. And the antithesis of that is the teachings of the Upanishads. Why are you even trying to enjoy this world? It's a fruitless endeavor. Anything that you enjoy comes with suffering. That's the way the world works. Reject it all, right? Even and in doing so, commonly it's interpreted as reject form, reject individuality, transcend this world, escape this world, right? And then bhakti becomes a synthesis of that. It takes all the duty of the Vedas. Be a good person. Be in this world. Be dutiful, be responsible. You can do all of that. That's all noble. Doesn't need to be renounced. But also add wisdom to it. Also see this world for what it is. Understand that you have a nature that transcends all this. Find that inner nature in yourself. But it's going beyond that and saying when you really find your own nature, you're going to find your nature in relation to God. And there's a loving relationship that you have in connection with that God that overrides everything. That's the deepest bliss. That's a bliss that's not subject to the happiness that you find here, and that is incredibly more vibrant and rich than what you can find just through renouncing the world. That can awaken in you, and that's divine love. And when you have that divine love, you're not thinking, how do I enjoy or how do I escape? You're just thinking, how do I please the one I love? It's the only truly selfless motive here. You understand? Here I'm thinking about my experience, here I'm thinking about my experience, but then I'm thinking about the experience of the one that I love. It's a different way of living, it's a different way of seeing the world, a different worldview, a different perspective. And it's one that synthesizes both. You can transcend this world, there's still form, there's still individuality, but their form and individuality not subject to the problems of this world that are beyond time, that are not subject to decay and destruction and so on. We're going to get more into all of this, but this is the idea that divine love becomes the principle here. Love God, love every living being through loving God. That's the point to life. Not to enjoy materially, not to escape material suffering, but to love on the spiritual platform. That's the goal. That's the motive. That's what we're looking for. And that's the inner message of the Bhagavad. That's the true message of the Bhagavad-gita. Are we okay? Yes. Your name again is? William.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So, if I've understood correctly, there's 3 different groups, as it were.
Yeah.
These chaps over here,
Yes.
they think they've got the answer.
They all do.
These guys think they got the answer. These guys think they got the answer.
Yes.
So that's the first thing.
Do they ever fight?
We're speaking from these guys over here. So we've decided there's a narrative where this is the evolution.
Yes.
But if I was talking to a top dog in this camp, he would have probably an equally persuasive narrative.
Not equally.
Okay, excuse me. But he would be persuaded.
He is persuaded.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my question is how does one make the wise decision? For example, I know in the Gita, some people think that Krishna is a metaphor, not the supreme personality of God, for example.
Those are people that land in the Jnana Kanda. They're going to look at it that way.
Yes. So what's the wise way of choosing? Maybe there's another elevated space there.
Well, if there's an author here, right? There's a writer. And he's written all these texts. And people are in disagreement about what is the higher, where does it all go? What is your message, right? So what's the best way to find out?
Test it. Test it out.
Well, that's one way. You could test it out, but you only, in one lifetime, it might be hard to figure them all out. But what's a sure way to find out?
Well, maybe go to a guru that you trust, potentially.
That would be good, but there are different gurus. But this was, maybe you weren't thinking this because you're thinking he's not here, but
Ask the author.
ask the author himself, right? If everybody's interpreting a movie in different ways and they're disagreeing about it, they can debate forever and never come to a conclusion. But there is one way you could find out. You could ask the writer of the film, what was it that you were trying to say? True? That would be a perfectly flawless way of establishing it. Otherwise, you can present arguments forever. True?
Yes.
Okay, this is a big thing. This is potentially taking me away from the Bhagavad-gita, but it's so important that let's answer it. There's a text called the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's also called the Bhagavad Purana. It's one of the 18 Puranas. And this is so fascinating. This is really what we talked about when we were here last year. We had a course just like this. And early on in that text, which is the conclusion of his texts, he writes, he shares his own story, that I had written the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Puranas. And he's sitting up in his hermitage way up in the Himalayas. He's saying, I've lived a good life. I've followed all the Vedic protocols. I've honored all the great sages. You know, he's got all good habits and all good background, and he's applied it so well, and with compassion, he's put out like this, what do they call when an artist like puts out like a huge amount of work, like a
Body of work.
huh?
Body of work.
Yeah, like a huge body of work. And he's saying, I should feel good. But he doesn't feel good. Feels like something's not right. He's a very sensitive yogi, you know? Something's not right. He's trying to go within. What is it? Why am I not satisfied? And he begins to intuit what it might be. Perhaps I haven't been clear enough in emphasizing the path of bhakti. Perhaps I haven't said enough about this, because this is really where it all goes. And then just at that time, his guru Narada comes, the sage amongst the devas. And Narada confirms for him, yes, you know, you've emphasized these others so much that people will not understand the glories of bhakti. You need to go back, you need to write more, and you need to clarify this so that there's no mistake about it anymore. So he writes a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he gets really explicit, where he just says in no uncertain terms, bhakti is the goal of all of this. Bhakti is the full evolution of all of this. He's like, from right out of the gate, he just starts to declare it. But then he does an incredible thing where then it opens up into a story. And the story is all these sages are gathered in the forest, trying to do something that's going to bring some positive energy into the Kali Yuga, into this age. And they feel like they're getting nowhere. They're all really qualified and adept, and respectful of each other, but they admit to themselves, we don't really know what the essence of all these works is. And so they turn to one sage amongst themselves, which is kind of what you were saying. They turn to the one that they trust the most, whose name was Sutta Goswami. And they say, Sutta, amongst us you're the eldest, amongst us you're the most deeply spiritually advanced, amongst us you understand the works of Vyasadeva better than anyone, you know their essence. Please tell us their essence. Please tell us what brings the highest good to all mankind. Is it karma? Is it jnana? Is it bhakti? Please tell us amongst these, what gives the complete satisfaction of the soul? Please tell us. We trust you. And he goes back to a conversation that he had witnessed of his guru speaking to the famous king, Maharaj Parikshit. And but in that, he comes out quickly and he says that it's bhakti. Savai pungsa paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhoksaje. That for all mankind, savai pungsa paro dharmo, the highest dharma, yato bhaktir adhoksaje, is devotion, love. Such love must be entirely selfless, unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to give complete satisfaction to the self. And then the sages say, well, what about the sages from the Jnana Kanda camp say, well, what about knowledge and renunciation, jnana and vairagya? When we read the Upanishads, it seems to be saying that's the highest thing. And he responds by saying that when you develop love, you automatically have knowledge and detachment. You already know the world and what it is, and you let go of everything. Like when you fall in love with a person, you let go of other things. All your other desires, they kind of fall to the wayside. When you fall in love with the Supreme Being, all of your material desires just drop. You see the material world for what it is now that you've tasted the spiritual. And then they say, well, what about all the duties in life that were in the 4 Vedas to cultivate good karma? He says now he gets really explicit, what's the word I'm looking for? It definitely direct, but almost like, yeah, I guess all these kind of work candid, but in other words, he says it he doesn't mince words here, right? He says that all of the duties in the Vedas that people do to get material gain, if through doing that, you don't develop any love, you don't develop any desire to hear about the glories of Krishna, then it's a complete waste of time. He says it like that, right? Whew. Imagine what all the Vedic priests are like, whoa. But as you said, it's kind of pointing someone in the wrong direction. If you've been here or here, it's definitely going backwards. It's only the right direction for people that are really, in our world, this is a very high level. but in the scope of all the Vedic literature, it's the beginner steps. And then he says all the duties that we do in life are meant for inquiring into the absolute truth. What is it or who is it that's behind everything? That truth that's not dependent on any other truth, that truth that all other truths come from. It's all meant for inquiring into that. And then the question would be, well, what is the absolute truth? Is it an energy? Is it a person? And then he says a very famous verse. Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajganam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaneti shabdite. And this takes us to the next model of evolution. Well, no, you can Bhagavan, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. That he says there are three different ways that this absolute manifests. As Brahman, as Paramatma, and as Bhagavan. As impersonal divine energy, non-personal energy. God can, that's one feature of God. As the supreme intelligence and organizer, you could say, behind the workings of the universe. And as a person that you can know and love intimately. God can be understood. It's all one God that's manifesting these different features. That's the absolute truth. Right? And so we're going to get into this too, that there's different levels that God will be spoken about, different levels of God realization. And with each level of realization, one understands more about themselves and more about the universe and more about life. So Bhagavad-gita will be speaking on these three levels. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Very well.
Okay, yeah. Not everybody accepts that text, the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the thing that answers it all. It's not. If you don't want to see it, you won't see it. That's how the bhakti yogis would say it. But here it is, right? But the author himself is saying, I'm going to clear everything up now. I know you're debating about this, and I'm going to clear up the debates. But it really is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Why don't let me just say all these three quick, and then we're going to go through some verses in the Bhagavad Gita that speak to these. The third category, this is kind of my own, I created this category. The other two are like traditional Vedic models. This is just something that I saw in the Bhagavad Gita, and I thought this is helpful. And that is that there are five, I'm calling them here stages of clarity. Clarity in the practitioner, clarity in their understanding that the Bhagavad Gita speaks on. One is called duty. One is called knowledge. One is called wisdom. One is called absorption. And one is called love. That if we look at any verse in the Bhagavad Gita, except for a few kind of like transitional verses, they're going to speak on one of these levels, or sometimes they're going to mention several of these levels. And I'll just briefly say something about this, because I'll go into it more. We may have to still be doing this tomorrow. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to leave it there, because I'll go into more detail when we get there, and maybe we can do it all today. If I spend 15 minutes on each of these sections, we can do this. And then if you have questions, you can write them down, and we'll take them first thing tomorrow. How does that sound? And if we have to go a little bit over time, we'll go a little bit over time today too. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. This is this is what we've already discussed in some detail. Karma, Jnana, and Bhakti. They each have a different motive. Why don't we read this? Would someone like to read it through the microphone? We got Ethan over here.
Start from the left.
Yes.
Okay, so karma is the motive of material enjoyment. The intentional cultivation of good karma through virtuous action, grounded in the conviction that favorable results produce happiness.
Makes sense? That's what we're talking about, right? I'm convinced that I'll get favorable results if I act well, and I'll be happy when I do that. Okay.
The next is jnana. The motive is release. The cultivation of self-knowledge and attachment, grounded in the conviction that suffering ends when the self is known to be distinct from body, mind, and world.
Okay, this is much more yogic kind of talk right now, right? Realize the self-realization. When you do that, you'll be released from this world. You'll be free.
And finally, bhakti, which motive is loving connection. The cultivation of devotion, grounded in the conviction that The self is fulfilled only through loving connection with the divine.
Okay, even if I'm free from the material ups and downs, if I'm not infused with love, then even that freedom is empty. You know, imagine you're working hard every day at work in this, rat race and difficult relationships and, competition in the workplace, and it's just wearing you down, right? And then you've saved up your money, you go out on a vacation, you go to the Bahamas. You ever see those photographs of people that go to the Bahamas? It's like perfectly white beach and blue water. And what's all the noise? And so it's just noise. And you get there, you're sitting on that beach and just sunshine. There's nobody else there, right? It's just peace. Sitting out there alone on that beach. Oh my God, so relaxing, such a relief. Whew. All your anxiety is slipping away. And it's so nice. But what if you stay there for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? What if you stay there for a week, you're still alone? What if you stay there for a month, you don't understand? It's gonna start to feel empty at some point, right? There's no love. If there's no love, it's empty. So that's where Bhakti says, only love can fulfill. Only love can fulfill. That makes sense? So we'll be talking about these things at length here, but we've hit the three different, this was one lens, karma, jnana, bhakti lens. Where does this verse land? Is it speaking on the karma level, the jnana level, or the bhakti level? Bhagavad-gita is going to speak on all three. It's going to validate all three, but it's also going to speak a little against two of the three. And this kind of speaks to your question too, because you're going to find Krishna saying he's going to validate the teachings of the Vedas, and he's going to speak real directly to Arjuna. Leave the Vedas behind. Leave the karma kanda teachings of the Vedas behind. You need to rise higher than that. And he's going to speak about jnana, but he's also going to have things to say about that too. A lot of the Bhagavad-gita is encouraging us to develop this jnanic realization, or what we call Brahman realization. But he's also going to point out to the emptiness, and there's something beyond that. But when he speaks about bhakti, he's always saying this is it. That's his real recommendation. That's where he's really going. I want to say one more thing before we go further to kind of wrap up what we discussed here. Is that okay? I've been using this word Vedanta. The Upanishads are called Vedanta. One reason is because Veda means, who knows what the suffix anta means? The end. Anta means the end. The end of knowledge, the end of the Vedas. So the Upanishads are the end of the Vedas because they're the last part that comes in each one. So the Upanishads are called Vedanta. That makes sense? But they're also called Vedanta because the message has evolved, right? In the Vedas, this is the final message, a higher message, a different message, right? So there is a school of philosophy, classical school of philosophy. There's 6 classical schools of Indian philosophy, but by far, Vedanta is the most alive and influential. It's pretty much what all of Hinduism grows out of. And even the other schools of philosophy borrow from Vedanta. I didn't quote this verse earlier, but it says that all the sages have borrowed from the infinite sky of the mind of Vyasadeva. So in other words, all the other philosophers, they're taking from his Vedic presentation and developing off of it. Okay. So the idea, what I'm trying to do is clarify the term Vedanta and talk about this school of Vedanta and how important it is and what it is. But this school is all important in studying of India and of the wisdom of India. And so the Upanishads are Vedanta. The Vedanta Sutra is a summary of the Upanishads, yes? So that is also Vedanta. And amongst the Mahabharata, there's one text called the Bhagavad-gita. 700 verses of the Mahabharata are also included because they're very Upanishadic. Sometimes the Gita is even called the Gita Upanishad, because the truths of the Upanishads are spoken about in the Bhagavad Gita. So these three texts, Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita, comprise the three texts that are called Vedanta. And if you there are lineages of Vedanta. Different lineages interpret it in different ways. Sometimes subtly different, and sometimes vastly different. Right? Essentially, there's two schools, and within those schools, you have different lineages. Each lineage, to establish themselves, a teacher comes along and writes commentaries on Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita. And that's how you stake your claim. That's how you say, this is the way Vedanta is meant to be understood, and the previous person didn't quite understand it correctly. I'm going to point out how that is based on these texts themselves. I'm going to put forward my arguments, and then they get followers and they have their lineage. They're off and running in the Vedanta lineage program. Does that make sense? So Bhagavad Gita now becomes a very important text amongst the vast, the Mahabharata itself, which is huge, and all the Puranas, which are massive. Bhagavad Gita and the four Vedas, which, it's only the Upanishads that fit in that category, is one of the big three. Not only is it one of the big three, but it's by far the most read of the big three. It's by far the most quoted and most understood. It's by far the easiest to understand. It's the most explicit and clear. Whereas these two speak in very cloudy, cryptic language. Again, right? You take one fullness, this is full, that is full. You take the full away from the full, and fullness remains. Not easy to understand. Bhagavad Gita is going to be much easier to understand. It's going to speak very clearly. Okay? So Bhagavad Gita becomes such an important text. All right. But now, does that make sense? Vedanta. Now we've spoken about what Vedanta is, the school of philosophy based on these texts. Question about that? Yes. William.
Do the Vedanta interpretations of the Gita, do they conclude in bhakti at the end?
Well, that's the debate. You see, that's one school is going to say, no. One school is going to say, knowledge is the highest thing. Bhakti is a nice thing. It can bring you up to a higher level, but you need to let go of it, because what is bhakti? It's love, and love requires an object and a subject, too. But any kind of duality is illusion. Any kind of form is illusion. The feeling of love is an illusory feeling. It's just something that's going on in the mind. It has no ontological truth to it. You need to dismantle it. You need to dismantle any loving sentiments that you have. They're untrue. Whereas the bhakti school is saying, knowledge is helpful. It's a good thing. But when you have love, it transcends all that. But they don't just speak like a bunch of sentimental, kind of lovey-dovey kind of people. They've got philosophy to back it up. They speak like a Vedantin is like a lawyer in a courtroom. Let's go to the books. Let's make some arguments. I got an argument that defeats your argument. Let's break down the Sanskrit. Let's really look into what it's being saying. Let me pick apart your, and that's what happened. That there was a very famous Jnana yogi named Shankaracharya who wrote a very powerful commentaries on these texts and changed the whole history of India. Brought it back from Buddhism to the Vedic literatures. But he did it in such a way where he explained the Vedic literatures in a way that was similar to Buddhism, in a non-personal way. And then these other bhakti commentators started to critique. They appreciated so much of what Shankar said, but they're saying, no, he didn't get it right. And then they give their interpretations of it, and those are the devotional schools. So again, we would argue that it all gets cleared up in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that this becomes really important. That the Srimad Bhagavatam is a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, written by Vyasadeva himself, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So that gets back to where I was saying, if one person could clear it up, it's the author himself. So what Vyasadeva does is says, I'm going to write an absolutely mind-blowing commentary on Vedanta Sutra that's just going to knock everybody out. It's going to be the best thing I've ever come up with. For its poetic beauty, it's going to blow away anything that I've ever done before. For its clarity and its presentation, it's going to blow away everything else. I'm going to be real explicit. I'm going to be super clear. And I'm going to give my own commentary on Vedanta Sutra that's going to clear it all up. But it doesn't clear it all up. Or it clears it all up for some people, but not for everyone. So the debate continues. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure. I suppose was there something else I want to say? Maybe I just got... Oh, no. Now I wanted to go to this other topic, and this is real important. Did I have an eraser here?
It's that red thing.
Red one.
Oh, done. Before the Bhagavad-gita, you have these two works, the four Vedas and the Upanishads. And again, these are in contrast to each other. They appear to have different messages. These are for priests who do rituals to help us enjoy the world. These are for renunciants that walk away from the world. These are for materialists, very nice materialists, and very somewhat evolved materialists that care about others and that live in the world in a nice way. And these are for those that say, I'm not interested in that. I want to transcend this world. I'm not interested in enjoying this world. I'm going to leave it all behind. Two different ideas, very different ideas. Let's look at Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Right? What was Arjuna's role in society? He was a warrior, right? Where does that idea of what a warrior does come from?
Caste system.
Well, you could say it that way, but there's what we call the caste system, strict followers and knowers of this would say that's a warped idea of it. But it's called Varnashram Dharma. Where does Varnashram Dharma come from? The four Vedas. That's where you're going to find it all, right? It's going to lay it out. What are our duties in life as a warrior, as a business leader, as a spiritual leader, in the different stages of life, as a student, as a married person, as a retired person, as a renunciate. All the duties in life were laid out here in the four Vedas. So Arjuna had lived that Vedic lifestyle. He had lived as a warrior. He had followed the codes of the warrior as they're laid out in the four Vedas. He had always done it with a sense of pride and happy to be serving in that way and live that life. And then he ended up on the Battle of Kurukshetra, which was like that was his moment. If ever he had a moment, that was it. If ever he had a moment to shine, that was it. If ever he had an important responsibility as a warrior, this was it. Right? I could go into the whole story, but I don't have time now. But believe me, after reading thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Sanskrit verses, it's all building up to this point where he rolls out on that battlefield with Krishna himself, Bhagavan Sri Krishna driving his chariot. And you can picture what Arjuna looked like, like powerful. He's on the back of that chariot. He's like, everybody's looking at him. And Krishna, of all people, is driving his chariot. That cinematic moment just would be mind-blowing. Two armies, two long lines of warriors. And the dust is rising and beautiful horses and Krishna's driving the chariot. Arjuna's, just determined. I'm going to kill the people that assaulted my wife. I'm going to take back the kingdom for my brother. I'm going to bring Dharma back into society and take it away from these horrible, evil men. I've taken vows 13 years ago of who I'm going to kill when I get here. I'm going to satisfy my wife. I've been promising her for 13 years that I would avenge the wrongs that were done to her. This is it. I got Krishna driving my chariot, and I am down to kill. right? And he's driving, and boy, I mean, these are like the most beautiful people you've ever seen. Krishna himself, and those horses, and they're driving through the two armies, and then Krishna stopped. The first thing that Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita, "Dear Krishna, please drive my chariot between the two armies so I can see who it is that I have to fight on this battlefield." And Krishna stops it right in front of the two men that Arjuna loves more than anyone. Bhishma, who's like his grandfather, and Drona, who's like his guru. Oh, he falls apart. He completely loses it. He can't stand up and, this is not the Arjuna that we know. We've never seen Arjuna like this before. From a boyhood, he was always ready, right? Now he falls apart. And rather than carrying out his Vedic duties as a warrior, he's thinking, he says, I'd prefer to live as a beggar. Right? That's the renunciate. Right? I want to walk away from the world. That's the Upanishadic idea. I want to find peace. I'm in so much anxiety. Right? I've lived this life and I've got wealth, I got power, I got reputation, I have several beautiful wives, children, all these wonderful things. I got material prosperity like crazy. Right? It works. Right? It works. But what don't I have? Peace of mind. He was in so much anxiety. And I know these renunciates that live out in the forest. They don't have any power. They don't have any money. They don't even have a home. What to speak of a family? None of these things. Reputation, influence, they're unknown. They sleep under a different tree every night. Right? They sleep in caves. But what do they have? They have peace of mind. Right? They have detachment from the things of this world. They have peace of mind. They have a happiness, not from external things, but they found a happiness within that doesn't quit. Right? That's not dependent on external things. These people understand more about life. And Arjuna is saying, I want to be like them. I want to be one of these renunciate yogis. That's what he's telling Krishna. I think that's what I should do. Whew. So you have a contrast here, right? And there's a tension between these two texts, these two bodies of texts. One saying, be dutiful in the world. One saying, renounce the world. They're almost opposites, right? Bhagavad-gita comes along and does something incredible. Bhagavad-gita comes along and says, there's more to this world than just enjoying it, but you don't have to walk away from the world to transcend. You can carry out your duties in this life, just like a good Vedic follower. Be responsible, be dutiful, right? Carry out your worldly duties, have a family, have a home, all those things. But you can do it with Upanishadic knowledge. You can do it knowing that I am not this body, I am not this mind, I am the spirit, I am the eternal Atma within, that my happiness is not dependent on these different things. So when I work in this world, when I'm dutiful in this world, but I'm doing it with knowledge, that I'm doing it with detachment, my motive is not to gain the things of this world, it's to transcend this world. So I look like a materialist, but I'm actually a yogi. I look like I'm not renounced, but internally I'm very renounced. And this is the yoga. We can call that karma yoga, right? Yoga that's active in this world. Yoga where you embrace your social responsibilities in life, your social roles in life, knowing that these temporary roles are not the real me, but I embrace these roles as the field of my contemplation. This is where I'll be contemplating my Upanishadic knowledge in the world. And Krishna is telling Arjuna again and again, as a warrior, you be a yogi. And Arjuna can't put the two together. He said, no, you're asking me to do this on one hand, be a warrior and fight this battle. That's a Vedic idea of doing my duty. And at the same time, you're asking me to be a yogi, be detached, apply knowledge and be detached. Could you please tell me which one you would like me to do? Because it sounds like you're telling me to do two things. So Bhagavad-gita does something that none of these texts had done before. It shows how everyone can be a yogi. It shows how you can still have a family, you can still have a job, and you can be a yogi. And I believe that that's part of why the Bhagavad Gita is by far the most read, most practiced, most alive, transformative text of all of these Vedic texts. Because it's real and you could really make it work in your life, and everybody can do it. Jivaji.
So just let me, I need to understand what you're saying. So you're saying now, correct me if I'm wrong, please,
Okay. Let me get my stick.
that while I would be honored. Basically, it's living in the world and using everything that's in the world to purify yourself as a tool, including all the worldly things, but putting it into a bhakti lens.
Lens is the right way to say it. And you can
Yes.
even say a jnanic lens, but it's harmonious with bhakti.
So it's actually living with the things we're grappling with in order to realize a higher
Truth,
truth.
yes.
Okay,
Or,
so
or you could say in order to realize the self,
the self.
who I truly am.
Okay, so I did understand that properly.
You did.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Arjunaji.
Prabhuji, I understand the concept. I just have one question. He actually lived both lives, though, right? Because he was exiled into the forest and he lived as a renunciate,
Well,
right?
he saw that life. He did. And I would imagine that had a lot to do with, he was in a royal family. So the royal families would be visited by these renunciates. They would walk into the kingdom, just like, they're living in these palaces with all these opulent clothes and opulent settings. And these renunciates would walk in practically just in rags. But everyone would be like, oh, look who's here. And they would come up and say, I want to speak with the king. And they say, come right this way. And then the king would say, oh, you've come from the forest all the way to my kingdom. You sit on my throne. Let me serve you. How can I serve you? And can I ask questions of you? Because you've understood the truth. Yes. So let's get you the mic.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I just want to understand. So when Yudhishthira lost the dice game and they all had to go to the forest, did they take their wealth with them, or did they live as renunciates in
No,
the
they
forest?
they walked away in the clothes of renunciates. It's described they took off their royal dress even before, just as right at that on the spot. They took off their royal clothes, and you know what they put on? Tree bark. What? Tree bark. Clothes made of tree bark.
So Prabhuji, he understood the concept intellectually, or didn't make the connection that he had already been living that life?
I wouldn't say that he lived exactly that life, but he lived like that. He lived amongst that. He might not have, he still had his wife there, and it was not exactly living that life, but he became very familiar with that life. Yeah. All right. We good? Covered a lot so far. Yes? All background stuff. Okay. Let's move forward one slide. Okay, this is a verse that's speaking about, now I want to give you an idea of why I'm sharing all this background knowledge. And as we look at verses in the Bhagavad Gita, how we can look at them through these different lenses. Okay? So first we're looking at this is a verse that has to do with karma. Right? It's a verse where the karmic viewpoint is validated by Krishna. He says early on, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. And now listen to this. They do not lead to the higher planets, but to infamy. That is a very karmic presentation there. What is the real goal of the karma kanda? It's to enjoy this world, but it's to enjoy the upper levels of this world. That if you live life in the right way, your next birth could be not on the earth, but on higher planetary systems within the universe where there's much longer life and much higher enjoyment. It's a very common theme in the Vedic texts. That's the goal of the highest goals of the karma kandi. And Krishna is speaking on that level to Arjuna. He's not speaking on the jnana level here at all. He's saying, Arjuna, do you want to go to the heavenly planets or not? Right? He's speaking on the level of karma. Does that make sense to everyone? Anybody unclear about that? That's good, right? Okay, let's see what else he says. See if he says anything else in the Gita that sounds like it's coming out of the 4 Vedas. Next verse. 2 verses here. Chapter 3, text 10 and 11. In the beginning of creation, already it sounds like the Vedas. The Vedas, if you want to, in one sense you could say religion and spirituality. That's the kind of language that we use sometimes now, religion and spirituality. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures. Does that sound religious or spiritual? Religious. Religious, right? In the beginning, what is religion concerned with? Salvation. What is spirituality concerned with? I would say like realization or enlightenment, right? This is salvation. I want good things to happen to me in my future life. I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. I want good things to come my way. Salvation. Salvation really means salvation from suffering the consequences of one's bad deeds. And this is like, I'm not concerned so much with that. I want to understand who I am. That's knowledge, jnana, right? I want good reactions. I want knowledge, karma, jnana, right? Salvation, enlightenment. So this is speaking on the level of salvation, it sounds to me, right? In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, people like us, and then the universal controllers, the suppliers, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, rituals to perform, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy, be materially happy, be prosperous. Be thou happy by this yajna, by these rituals, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and then ultimately achieving liberation. The idea is when you've lived happily long enough, you let go of everything like that. The dharma, artha, kama, and then moksha. That's where the Upanishads come in. The demigods being pleased by sacrifices, being pleased by your rituals, by your demonstrations of gratitude, will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Right? That is karmic language, is it not? Right? Now, there's a reason why he's speaking this. And if you understand it in context, you'll understand that this isn't where he wants to take Arjuna. This isn't the final level, right? Sometimes when you ask Indian people, what is the message, the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita? They'll say one thing commonly. Anyone have any idea? They say, do your duty. Do your duty. And a lot of times it's kind of like, because that's what they're telling the kids, that you have to do this, do your duty. We did our duty, now you have to do your duty. That's just the lower level message of Bhagavad Gita. The real message of Bhagavad Gita is love, right? And we'll see how that plays out. Okay, so this is all validating the karma kanda, is it not? Now, does he speak against the karma kanda in the Bhagavad Gita, though? Let's see. Next verse. Text 242 and 43, and I think the next verses will also continue this message. Men of small knowledge, little jnana, right? Small knowledge. Men of small knowledge are very much attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas. It's called pushpatam vacham, flowery words. They sounds really nice. It's going to be really sweet, right? Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to the heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life. Bhogaishvarya. Bhoga means material enjoyment. Aishvarya means material opulence. Bhogaishvarya. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life. They say there's nothing more than this. The highest thing that you get from Vyasadev's text is the karma kanda, and it's going to give you prosperity and happiness through material things. You'll get bhoga, you'll get enjoyment, you'll get aishvarya, you'll get opulence. But he's saying, no, it's people with small amount of knowledge. They don't have much jnana, right? Okay, and the next verses. In the minds of those who are too, it's the same word here, bhogaishvarya. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things. They're not seeing the truth. The resolute determination, here it's called samadhi, samadhau nabhatiyate. The resolute determination, samadhi, does not take place. They get no samadhi. They get no even mind, like the yogi has, like the jnani has, all right? Less intelligent people. He just totally dissed the whole Vedic idea right here in the Bhagavad Gita. So he validated it. It works. But then he said, come on, Arjuna, you can do better than that. Right? You're speaking like one of these people. Oh, I'm worried. Will I get good karma or bad karma if I do this, if I fight this battle? Will I enjoy or will I suffer because of it? Come on. You should be thinking on a higher level than that, right? We're not just worried about the reactions that we get, right? Can't you see from a higher platform? Let go of these ideas, the flowery promises that are made in the Vedic literature. There's much more to life than that, okay? So we can look at any verses in the Bhagavad Gita and say, are they speaking on the level of karma? Are they speaking on the level of jnana? And then, or are they speaking on the level of bhakti? That's a possibility too. But we just looked at karma right now. Now let's go to jnana. And you can go ahead and one more. So now we're going to have verses that speak about jnana. Text 270 and 71. When you get to these texts, you begin to feel, oh yeah, this is Bhagavad Gita, right? This is wisdom, right? A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires. What does the karma kandi do when he has desires? He does rituals and does good activities to try to fulfill the desires, right? That's how he responds to his material desires. This is a different approach. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean. The ocean, there's a little tide, it goes up and down just a little bit, and rivers are flowing into it nonstop, but it just stays where it is. It's saying we may have so many desires, but can we remain unchanged, even when we have these desires, that I'm not pursuing them? So a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Look at you, Arjuna. Are you at peace? A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, he's renounced these desires, right? Who lives free from desires, and who has given up all sense of proprietorship. Says nir mamo, nothing's mine, and then nir ahankara, and is devoid of false ego. I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, nothing is mine. I don't possess anything. He alone can attain real peace. This is jnana. This is Upanishadic teachings, right? All those desires in your mind's not you. All the things of this world, they can't satisfy the real you. Let go of it all. Be undisturbed by it all. No need to pursue those things. That doesn't lead to happiness. The real happiness is something that you find within. This is jnana. Make sense? Getting a picture of it? This is more what the Upanishads are teaching, right? A lot of Bhagavad Gita speaking on this platform. What else do we have? Now, this is a verse. You see, one school of Vedanta, and the way, because the Upanishads speak in a cryptic way, they're not so direct about the absolute truth. They speak a lot about the absolute truth, but they speak especially about the non-personal feature of the absolute, and they occasionally speak about the personal feature, but in not so much detail. So it's not uncommon that people interpret the Upanishads as in such a way where the absolute truth, the supreme that's behind everything, is non-personal. And well, then what do you make of Krishna? Well, Krishna is that non-personal energy taking a form temporarily. But that form is just an illusion, and it disappears, and you go beyond that. So here it says, unintelligent men. Right? They're kind of straightforward, cold. Abudhaya, right? Avyaktam vyaktam apanam manyate mam. Manyate means they think, the manas, the mind. Manyate mam, they think about me. Abudhaya, this is the way the abudhaya, the unintelligent people think about me. They think avyaktam vyaktam apanam, that I was unmanifest and now I'm manifest, right? That this form that you see me in right now, it's a temporary thing, right? No. If we understand Bhagavan, we understand Krishna's form is eternal and that everything comes from that form. So he says, unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. This word avyayam, anuttamam, this is very Upanishadic language here. These are words that you're going to find in the Upanishads to describe the absolute truth. And now Krishna is saying, all that stuff you heard in the Upanishads about being imperishable and supreme, that was me that was talking about. That was me. I am that absolute truth. So this is a verse that speaks against the Jnanic approach or common Jnanic interpretation. Krishna is going to say all karma is meant to come to him. All jnana is meant to come to him. But he's pointing out the interpretations that take him out of the picture, that take ultimately devotion out of the picture. So we've seen Krishna validate karma and then speak against it. We've seen Krishna validate jnana and then speak against it in a way. Or at least speak against the misapplication of it. Let's put it that way. Make sense? Yes, Sui. Let's get her a microphone.
Over here.
Okay. I started reading Bhagavad-gita, and in the beginning, Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna to fight.
Yes.
By saying things like, why would they think if you don't fight?
Yes.
And I felt that there's a focus on reputation.
Yes.
Is this part of the four Vedas, the karma?
Oh, you see,
Or-
everything that I was hoping to convey, you're already doing it ahead of time. This is exactly what I want you to be able to see, that when you look at those verses, those don't sound like he's telling Arjuna, if you don't fight this battle, everybody's going to say bad things about you. Isn't that going to hurt? Right? And shouldn't you think that this is a great opportunity, because either you win lots of wealth and you win a kingdom, or even if you lose, you die and you go to the heavenly planets. That's a great opportunity. He's speaking on the level of karma, right? Okay. What is he saying? It's because, what was he saying in the verses before that? Can you remember? No. Okay. In the verses before that, he was speaking on the level of jnana. You're not your body. You are the soul. The body is sure to die. The soul will never die. You can't cut the soul into pieces. You can't destroy it in any way. The soul is eternal. Learn how to tolerate the temporary things in this world and focus on the eternal soul. But apparently he was looking in Arjuna's face, and Arjuna wasn't calculating. So then he went down a notch. Okay, if jnana is not appealing to you, then let me appeal to you on the level of karma. People are going to say bad things about you. You know? Throughout the Bhagavad-gita, it's going to praise the Jnanic platform of the wise person has an even mind, whether it's hot or cold, whether people are saying nice things about you or not nice things about you, fame or infamy. You have an even mind. That's more truth, and much more the Bhagavad-gita is going to be about that, but just for a few verses there. Krishna's like, come on, Arjuna, do I have to appeal to you on this level? You know? Okay. If you don't fight, everybody's going to say you chickened out. If you don't fight, you're going to miss a big opportunity, to go to heaven, enjoy on a much higher level. So just for a moment, he comes on that level. It was confusing to you. Why is it speaking like this? It didn't seem yogic.
Why does it matter?
Yes. So now you have a bit more context.
Thank you.
He said, let's talk on the karmic level. But then he says, let me talk on a higher level now for you. Okay. How about bhakti? Verses about bhakti in the Gita. Yoginam apisarve sham madgaten antar atmana shradhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. And of all the yogis, the one who with great faith always abides in me, thinks of me within himself. This is a type of meditative absorption he's talking about, not the thing that the Karmakanda follower does. That's not for meditation at all, right? It's the jnani that gets meditative focus, but when it's focused on Krishna, when you take your ability to have clear meditative absorption, and rather than focus it on the impersonal, you focus it on Krishna. Now we've got bhakti. You focus it on Krishna with love in your heart, with affection in your heart. Now we've got bhakti. So they got everything the jnani has, everything the yogi has, but more, because that emptiness, that peace that they found, and they filled that space with beautiful devotion, beautiful love, beautiful Krishna. Let me just finish this first. So, of all the yogis, one who with great faith always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Okay, clear. Very, it's very emphatic. It's very direct. It's a very clear statement where Krishna is saying bhakti is where this all goes. Of all the different types of yogis, it's the bhakti yogi that's the highest. It's the fulfillment, it's the conclusion, it's the culmination of yoga. That was not so clear in the Upanishads. People, you're going to have two schools. Some are saying, no, it is clear. Look at these verses. If you really look at it, but it's harder to draw it out. You're going to have much more of a debate about it in the Upanishads, but it becomes really direct in the Bhagavad-gita. Everybody with me on that?
Okay, so, I don't know, I think this is
Well,
out
it
of
takes
batteries.
two
No,
seconds
okay.
to go on.
So, I just looked up abide because I really want to understand this
Mm-hmm.
to the fullest, and there's kind of three different things about what abide means.
Yes.
Here it says accept or act in accordance with.
Okay.
Then there is able to tolerate.
Okay.
And then there is...
The dude abides.
And then a feeling, a continue without fading or being lost.
Say it again.
To continue without fading or being lost.
It may be that in one. I would probably lean towards the first. Mm-hmm. To read it again.
Accept or act in accordance with a rule, decision, or recommendation.
Yeah, abides in me, and I would look at it as like taking shelter of.
Okay.
Like in other words, I could follow what this says, I could follow what that says, or I could follow what Krishna says. Let me take shelter of that.
Because I honestly
abide
didn't
in
really
that.
know what abided really means in this
Yeah.
context. So,
That's how I'd say it.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. William. We're out of time. Can we go 10 minutes or so? Everyone okay with that? Yes? Maybe not. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, William.
I just want to make sure I understood this correctly. So the way I'm looking at this is, you know how you may have heard in physics, they say there's Newtonian physics and then there's quantum physics.
Yes.
And they can't be reconciled, but they both describe reality effectively.
Yes.
So it's kind of like on the one side, we've got be in the material world, you have desires, realize that. On the other hand, it's like, yeah, but actually you're not a part of this. You're not the false ego. And they're both describing some sort of truism, but the thing that connects the two is bhakti. It's like, yeah, you're not the false ego,
Yes.
but you are actually a servant of Krishna.
Yes.
And it's not about rejecting the material world.
Yes.
It's about using it in service of Krishna.
Because it's all Krishna's. It's not mine.
Yes.
Yes. So it's thesis, antithesis. Bhakti is the synthesis.
Yeah, thank you.
You got it.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Kishore Gopi.
Thank you, Kaustubha Prabhu.
Thank you.
What would the impersonalist
Do with that verse.
yeah. How do they take out all the me? You know?
You see, if you read Shankara's commentaries on Upanishads, they play nicely to most of it because they're spoken in such a way where they're vague enough. And because they're largely describing that one aspect of the absolute truth that is non-personal, that his commentaries play very nicely there. But when they come to the Bhagavad-gita, not so much. Even in this verse, he's saying me again and again and again. There's a verse, if you look at a verse, if you said, what is the central message of the Bhagavad-gita? You could say 934. Would you pull that verse up, please? Where Krishna says me 5 or 6 times in 4 lines of a brief poetic verse. Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru mam evasyasi satyante pratijane priyosime. Or did I say, the verse is actually repeated twice. At least the first 2 lines are repeated twice. He says it dead center in the middle. There's 18 verses. So the last verse of the 9th chapter is right in the middle. And then he repeats it again at the end of the Bhagavad-gita. Right? Now, if the non-personalists were to say, we need a clear message in Vedanta to tell us that God is a person and that the goal of it all is to connect with that person. Well, we need an emphatic statement that points this out. Well, can you get any more emphatic than this? What would Krishna have had to do to convince them? Right? So he says, Man mana bhava mad bhakta. Engage your mind always in thinking, not just of the impersonal oneness, and thinking of the Upanishads would have said something like, engage your mind always thinking of the eternal. Engage your mind in always thinking of the absolute, the unchanging. It would use language like that. Here's the Gita Upanishad, where Krishna is being more explicit. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. And he'll say, I am avyayam, I am eternal, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Pretty clear. He uses the word bhakta, bhaktya, right? Offer your obeisances unto me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in the non-personal absolute? No. Being completely absorbed in me, right? Surely you will come to me. Not that surely you will realize that you are the absolute and there's nothing else. You will come to me. This is commonly how Krishna speaks about the enlightened stage, the final, the completed stage. He says, they come to me. Right? That's the language he uses most in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, actually, if you, maybe we don't read the commentary, but I'll just say this. In the commentary, Prabhupada speaks about a famous commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And I actually found a copy of it in the bookstore. And I bought it just because it has that famous commentary that Prabhupada is directly criticizing. But he says, he criticized one, he didn't name it by name, but we all know who it was. It was a man that used to be the president of India, and he wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita. And there he says that when Krishna says me in this verse, he's not referring to Krishna the person, but he's referring to the dark unknown within. Yeah, because Krishna means dark. So, so he's saying, although generally in Sanskrit writing, in Sanskrit poetry, repetition is considered a flaw, not an ornament. So when it's used, it's considered to be significant. And the fact that Krishna 5 or 6 times in this verse said me, dead center in the Bhagavad Gita, and said, absorb your mind in me, always think of me, become my devotee, me, again and again and again. He was being as emphatic as he could possibly be. If you're not going to accept, but when Shankar comments on these verses, he always says, when he says me, he's speaking about the self, the Atma. But it's a weak, it is a weak, it's a weak argument. So it's a weak argument. They don't do so well with Bhagavad Gita, what to speak of Bhagavatam.
They take the the Bhakti verse is out, right?
In the Gita?
Yeah.
Well, there was one famous person that just wrote he just did a commentary on the first 6 chapters. Because the middle 6 are the Bhakti chapter, where the messages starts getting emphatic, you know. So they have a harder time with the Gita, a better time with the Upanishads or the Vedanta Sutra, but a difficult time with the Gita. Okay, why don't we stop here? We covered a lot of ground. We have some more ground to cover. Okay, one more question. Yes, let's get the microphone over there. We'll take one more question and we'll end. Gulnara, wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Hi, hello.
Yes. Yeah, everyone can get used to that. When you get the microphone and you turn it on, it takes 2 seconds to actually kick in.
So I just wanted to see it in a perspective. Let's say, so the Gita was spoken on the battlefield, and I think it's Sanjaya, right? Who
Yes.
tapped into it.
Yes.
To this conversation.
Yes.
But it's also Vyasadeva who's tapping into that. So Sanjaya tapped into Vyasadev's,
And Vyasadeva is recording it.
and Vyasadeva is recording it.
Sanjay is tapping into on the scene, right? He's seeing the conversation take place on the battlefield, and Vyasadeva is recording it from that perspective.
Oh, through Sanjaya. Okay.
He as a director would write a film, okay? As a director would frame a particular way. He could have not done it through Sanjay, and he could have just gone straight to. He could have just gone straight to the battlefield directly, but he chose to frame it through Sanjay speaking to Dhritarashtra, and he ends the Bhagavad Gita there as well. And it's a really interesting contrast because Dhritarashtra, it's because of his foolishness. It's because of his not stepping up and doing the right thing. It's because of his material attachments to his own sons at the neglect of the Pandavas that this whole war has happened and he loses all his sons on the battlefield. He's anticipating this happening. He's really worried about it. And so at the end, Sanjaya, who's like a yogi, he's saying, I'm in bliss hearing this conversation. He says, I got goosebumps hearing this conversation. But you can imagine Dhritarashtra's I'm so... And then he says straight to Dhritarashtra, he says, wherever there's Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever wherever there's Arjuna, the carrier of the bow, I think, and wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, the Yogeshwara, surely there'll be great opulence, power, and victory, or something like that. Huh? Yeah. So Dhritarashtra's hearing this. I always knew I should have stopped all this, but I never did. And now it's going to happen. Now the battle's going to take place. But you see that Sanjaya, who's like a yogi, he's a disciple of Vyasa. It's by Vyasa's power that he's able to see it. He's like, oh, this is so great.
And
it's interesting, the relationship between the counselors and the kings, that they had the freedom to speak very openly.
And I just want one more, I'm sorry.
Yes.
If Vyasadeva kind of transcends the material time, right? He just is beyond this time.
In a
Is that
sense.
right? Because
he was born in this world at a particular time, but he's considered a Chiranjiva, a person with an incalculably long lifetime.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you all so much. I'm really appreciating this group here. I'm looking forward to digging deep into this Gita with you all. Is everything okay? You can give me feedback if it's been a little difficult. You need to let me know. We'll slow down. I'm really more concerned that everybody's understanding things as we go and feeling like they're learning. If we don't cover the whole Gita, that's not the end of the world. Or we'll cover it in a way where we cover the whole message but don't get into it all. We're not quite ready to start the first chapter yet. We have more of this background work to do tomorrow. Maybe I'll share that with you. And you can look, would that be good? Yeah. You can familiarize yourself with it. I'll give you that.
You put it on the thread.
I'll put it on the thread. And I can either share it. in separate slides, or I can give you the whole slideshow. But if you get the whole slideshow, you'll need like, what's that thing, PowerPoint? It could be exported as a PDF. Should I just do that? Maybe that's the simplest thing to do. Yeah. Okay, I'll share it with you as a PDF. And then, but we'll come back and maybe we'll go through it a little quicker that way tomorrow.